Welcome everyone. This is Mara Elaine, and this is another episode or transmission from the Earth and Wisdom, Cosmic Wisdom series. And these are conversations for evolutionary times on our planet with people that I have met along my own path and those who inspire me with their walk on this planet. And today I have a man I've yet to meet in person, but I've been deeply inspired by his work, Luke Kohen. And Luke is a mentor, he is a speaker, he is a heartist and ecopreneur. He carries a unique multidisciplinary wisdom in service to an emerging culture on this planet. And since 2008, he has been working professionally empowering individuals, groups, organizations, and movements to become greater agents of alignment in service to all life. As a facilitator, Luke brings his 14 years of experience as a self-mastery mentor, a quantum healer, a core energetics therapist, a shadow worker, and coach. As an artist, speaker, and poet, all of his content is informed from his primary orientation towards building a positive paradigm shift on this planet at this current time. He is definitely a bridger of many communities and realities from what I've observed in following him over the years. And I'm greatly honored to have you here today, Luke, to dive into whatever heart transmission and wisdom wants to be spoken to today. So thank you for being here, Luke. It's an honor.
I just came so I could listen to your Irish accent because it's so good.
Oh, thank you. I've definitely gotten more Irish, I was told recently, since coming home from travels in recent years. So yeah.
That'll do it. Yeah, there's a few people who live in Bali from Ireland that I'm friends with, and they're all on this path doing deep work. Actually my person that does my colonics is Irish.
There you go. We're great at shoveling shit. Honestly.
I call him the shamanic colonic guy because he's more than just a colonic guy. He's actually like years of work as a Brennan healer and all these other things, but he decided to focus on that as the best way he could help people. It's really interesting.
I love that.
Anyway,
there you go. That's a great service.
Yeah. Let's just dive. Let's just go. Let's go right into it. We're gonna dive right into it. Yeah.
We're going right into those deep places.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So thanks for having me on. I'm grateful to be here with you and everybody. Hi everybody. Tuning in from Bali, where I feel very fortunate to call home at this on this time on Earth. And we've crossed paths. We have a lot of mutual friends, and I'm excited that you're making this available to people. So.
Thank you. No choice. It's that time. It's just spirit knocking on the door and moving through us in the ways that we uniquely are moved.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're currently on Bali, and I want to speak a little bit about that land and your experience there, but I would love to set a little foundation about you as a being and your biological roots and where you've come from to bring you to now.
So I was born and raised in New York City. I was raised in like an artsy family. Both my parents are shrinks. So, interesting enough, wow. It didn't mean that there wasn't any dysfunction. There's probably more nuanced dysfunction because of that. But, I had an interesting upbringing in that, I grew up in, lower middle class neighborhood, but surrounded by, a lot of, tougher neighborhoods on all sides, and definitely went through a lot of, rites of passage, typical masculine New York, gangs, things like that. So I came up in a space where I was forced into being a warrior, there was no choice. It was just like, you got to warrior up. and survive there. So I got into my healing path essentially as a result of my body actually breaking down kind of young. I had a full healing crisis at 22, and it was part of the repetitive stress of martial arts when I took that on. And very highly competitive basketball and street ball. So you're on the concrete, and you're I didn't know I was empathic or had all these intuitive gifts. I had shut them down kind of pretty young because of the density of that environment. And so so when my body broke down, it was like I got pretty depressed. I was 22 years old, went from playing 10 full court games of basketball, grappling, sparring, training, to basically walking with a cane almost overnight. And it was pretty devastating for a 22-year-old ego to go into that. And I had a dichotomy within me of the mainstream culture that I was participating in, even though I was an old soul and I could observe a lot of the distortion, and there wasn't a lot of fulfillment actually through the substance abuse or any of these outlets that were very prevalent in that American culture, and that that kind of college scene and high school scene that I came up with. But movement was my healthy outlet. The flow states through basketball, through martial arts, is where I got a little break from my hypervigilant mental body and the coping with a lot of those things that were going on. So when that happened, I was thrusted into a path unbeknownst to me, and had a sort of a spontaneous awakening during that time. I had a cast iron teapot that I had bought myself for my 22nd birthday, and I got into tea kind of spontaneously just before this. And I was sitting one morning and I was drinking green tea out of this cast iron teapot, and I dropped into what I call the living stillness of the universe, that pure quantum empty space. And I spent some kind of timeless moments in that energy for a bit. And when I was in that space, I woke up a memory of being a Taoist hermit in a past life, and it was like, whoa, okay, whatever this feeling is, this is what I've been looking for my whole life. This is what I've only remotely touched with substances, only remotely touched through those flow states, through martial arts and basketball and running. It was everything my soul could have possibly have been looking for. And I was like, wow, I need to dedicate my life to this feeling. And so within a week, I had transitioned out of my fraternity and, gave up eating meat and smoking pot and drinking alcohol and watching TV, and would go take trips to my neighboring college town where there was a little more culture, and go try to find monks to talk to. I was just like lit on fire for the desire for enlightenment, and, just completely in a massive transition, obviously. And in that time, I felt like my soul merged with me. And when my soul merged with me, I could see where it had been in the background my whole life up until that point. And I was basically catalyzed and catapulted onto a hero's journey. And that was over 14 years ago, and haven't looked back since. And that's taken me on a pretty wild adventure through parts of the world, at the feet of some master level souls and teachers and healers, and native elders, and many lineages, and it's been a kind of a journey of reclaiming my soul's walk through many incarnations in the different mystery schools that I've been a part of, that my soul has mastery in, and where there was distortion, and taking the gift and leaving that which no longer serves, calling back, reclaiming the gifts, and letting go of the aspects that are, maybe we're dogmatic or not in current with this age that we're in. And so a lot of vigorous initiations in those times, definitely movies worth of peak experiences and wild, magical stuff, movies worth. So I had no idea what I was getting, what life was throwing me into, but when I committed to healing myself and healing my body, because I went to, like, when I was that young, I went to physical therapists, and I went to doctors, and I went everywhere, and none of them could tell me what was wrong with me. They were like, yeah, you probably need a hip replacement when you're 30. We don't know what's wrong with you. And the only thing that gave me relief was yoga. And so when I graduated college and I had been ignited with this energy, I waited tables for summer and I went right to India. So I never entered the 9-to-5 world. I never entered into society at that level. I literally went right onto the spiritual path at that ripe coming of age point. with a complete devotion to healing myself, and in that process eventually crossed a threshold where it overflowed into supporting others, and those gifts started to unlock, and piece by piece, layer by layer, year by year, teacher by teacher, my medicine bag, or the toolbox began to deepen and develop. And yeah, it's a big part of who I am. Obviously there's a lot of other things that I do that my soul likes to express itself in many ways, but my essence has been committed to that path of healing. And yeah, so that's a little bit of context for me.
Thank you. Yeah, and I can feel all those parts of you, and all of those journeys through the underworld and back out the other side. And I think that's the richness and that's the depth of embodiment that's truly needed right now for so many, who are maybe just waking up to these other realities in themselves as well. And I know something that you spoke to that I saw on your social media recently was, the need for the proper rites of passage through these initiations, and really the integration of them, right? And because I think that's so necessary in a culture now, particularly the younger emerging masters that are coming through, and that they don't have the same karma to move through, but yet there is a need, right, for these rites.
I'm so glad you said that, because I have found a lot of my friends are younger because there's less density there. They're lighter, whereas my own generation, there's still a lot of baggage that's being purified, and so taking this time to purify my heart and being a very open, undefended way of relating to life, I really enjoy the youth, and I've always been kind of a bridge between the elders and the youth, and have my own youthful, I don't see age, I see soul. So yeah, it's always been great. And I've chuckled with clients and with friends, and some of these younger, like some of my best friends are, one of my business partners is, he's just turned 30, and so there's some old souls that came in with a little less baggage, but there's it's like we some of us that were that first wave of ascension, we did a lot of the heavy lifting and kind of help grid the consciousness to prepare more people to make it easier for them, and then they make it easier for the next, and they make it easier for the next, and so forth and so on. And yeah, there is a very real like to come out of the innocence and not innocence, out of the naivety of certain things. Or I remember looking back at where I was such a freaking little know-it-all. I was just like, before I went through certain humbling experience, I was just like, you little spiritual snob.
Yeah, that's a stage.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
It's a rite of passage. Yeah. You have to meet that little spiritual snob.
Yeah, well, he has to get annihilated. You go through, a couple of dark nights of the soul, and you're not so, you get grounded in your human. This is what it is. A lot of people that have really spiritual gifts. These rites of passage are tricky, because when we talk about this in the work of, like, there's the spiritual tools. And we'll call that the light work. There's the yogas and the qigongs and the shamanic tools and the medicine. So all the beautiful plethora of soul technologies available to us. We'll see that's the light. And then the shadow work, there's, the inner child healing, there's the trauma work, there's the clearing the ancestral trauma and the family constellation work. And a lot of people gravitate towards one or the other. And when they awaken on a path, they either go into one or the other, or, but for a lot of the people that are a little more default multidimensionality or default sensitivity, they tend to gravitate more towards the light. They want the spiritual tools, and then actually at some point becomes an adherence to actually going into the shadow work or into the underworld aspects that, yes, you can access those plates in plant medicine. There's underworld energy and stuff to face, but it's where it becomes integrative in the shadow of our human self, like where you can do it in relationship. Like, great, you can do it on your own in a cave or in a mountain. That's not what this lifetime's about. It's about bringing it into relationship. And so that's where most of the hangups happen for spiritual people is in their own relationship with dismantling the ideologies of spirituality and what it means to meet the trauma on a somatic level in their everyday life, to allow them to function in connection with other human beings. That's the edge for most of us. And
Yeah.
so that's taken me 14 years to learn how to relate to other people from my humanity, not with the mask of a spiritual teacher or a healer, which I hid behind for years in community and positioned myself in the world in that way. And that was great, and it served its time. But we're at that turning point where it's like, we need to get real. We need to get more vulnerable. We need to get honest with each other, and not let the spiritual gifts be a way of hiding from the even deeper work that's ready to happen, that allows that true integration to happen. Because people can hang out in that, and then the shadow side of the shadow work is endless healing, endless clearing, swimming for looking for the stuff, and not going up to the light enough, and so the work I do with people, and what I feel proud of in the awareness that's emerged is the integration of those, like having the tools from that side of the higher dimensional, and then the ancestral, and then where that meets in relationship, and being able to synthesize all those elements to create an integrated soul, for us to be in the body fully here in connection with others, functional in our day-to-day lives, not in collapse, not in crisis, not in trying to integrate too much psychedelic or multidimensional experiences. But there's stages of that are going to happen for people when their kundalini wakes up. They have their first plant medicine journeys, and their crown chakras blown open for the first time, and they try to integrate transpersonal experience. It's a lot. There's a lot of stages to the journey, and
There sure are.
I'm not going to stop.
It's ever evolving. I think what do you feel or sense in you was a critical kind of turning point of integration for you, with kind of synthesizing the shadow and the light within you?
Relationship, like for me, I had a propensity towards the esoteric. I got catapulted into a medicine path after the yogic journey of kind of reclaiming that mystery school. There was a choice point where I met the medicine for the first time, and was introduced to the beauty ways and ceremony ways of South and North American shamanism, and I think there was a part of my human that was really needing to meet the Earth Mother. Like it wasn't integrated in my walk, and there was that life was kind of guiding me in that direction. But the thing is, even though there was a propensity towards the esoteric and towards the unseen and towards spirit world and that kind of work, really at the end of the day, and this is reflecting back, and I was actually like chuckling to myself thinking about this today, I was like, wow, I was like ultimately just trying to heal codependency. Like at the end of the day, like all this like deep shamanic work, it was all really just to heal codependency. Like, at the end of the day, I was really, really wanting to become whole in myself. And it's the unglamorous side of the wound, because when we go into that work, the ego construct or the defense structure is so sneaky sometimes that we think we're going in for one thing and really it's for something else. Or we can create a whole spiritual persona and identity that's actually still just an extension of that same mechanism to avoid a set of feelings or whatever it was. So for me, it was really breakups. It was the divine feminine, those counterparts that humbled me into my humanity, where I was like, no matter how many ideals I got about who I think I am, and is regardless of as gifted as I am as a healer, I got this gaping wound I gotta freaking look at, and so it was the series of breakups that really humbled me out of the illusion that I had resolved certain things and into the realities that there was some stuff that was still cooking down there deep in my most human self, my most vulnerable aspects of my being. And so that, that work and that's a lot of work I've done with my bioenergetics mentors, you know, is the mystery school of working with the inner child in the nervous system, not as a construct, but as a living energy in our nervous system. And that gave me so much context for everything else, really understanding the archetypes of the ego defense structures
Mm.
as a framework of how the soul evolves. Like we actually, like our wounds are a divine template that our soul evolves through. You know, it's like, I call it scaffolding. You know, our wounds are scaffolding for our soul. And so, yeah, I think that was a pivotal, you know, all those breakups were pivotal in catalyzing me in the direction of integrating so that I could be in relationships. So I wasn't bypassing my wounds in connection, and that I got to really learn what it means to be here and be with the other, and not just in my own reality, you know, as tapped
Right.
in as I am. I wasn't seeing things. Yeah.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah. As a hermit, I understand that reality, and then that dance of the other, it for sure is it's a huge growth point. Yeah.
Yep, it is.
I think it's really speaking to loss of any kind, and how loss in itself is really a gateway to meeting yourself, you know, in those deep places. Um, you know, and I know, having read your bio, there was a pivotal loss at that time for you, wasn't there, in your life when you earlier in your 20s with, I think, with your brother-in-law, was it?
Yeah, I lost my brother-in-law in 9/11, which was part of why my body shut down, was all the grief that was stored
Right.
and all the ways that I numbed that grief that accumulated over my uni experience, because it was my freshman year of uni that we lost David. And
Mm.
that was, he loved Ireland too. We got ancestry on that side over there. Yeah, so that was my first experience with loss at that level, where it was like, you know, I had friends that lost parents that, like, I felt deeply impacted by, and that was really where my hero's journey started. It was 9/11, and that brought me also into an alternative narrative worldview, because this is at a point where critical thinking was still being taught in universities. All of my college professors that I had were educating me in a scholarly way on our systems, how big oil and big media and big politics and pharma all were like this conglomerate. And so I was getting a scholarly education on how those systems work, as opposed to like YouTube. And 9/11 just happened, so I kind of got thrusted in this inquiry and reconciliation with that. And so it's really interesting, you know, when all the stuff going on in the world right now, all the propaganda level conspiracies, and some of it's are just psyops, and some
Yeah.
of it's real, some of it's half truths, some untruths. But like that first gateway of like, oh wow, like there's something going on here. So that was also part of my initiation, was kind of getting popped out of the orientation that governments care about their people, or, you know, it was a combination of a lot that kind of shifted my worldview, and
Yeah.
9/11 being profound catalyst in that way. And then also interacting with my brother-in-law's soul multiple times throughout my journey, as I began to awaken those gifts. He was there. He was kind of like guiding me from the other side for a long chunk of that journey. And I'd say a good 10 years he was with me, until my sister re-met someone that she could be with. He like was able to go do other work. And so I had a
Right.
really profound experience in my first sweat lodge, where it was irrefutable to me that life continues beyond this one, and that dimension is a real dimension. And it shifted how I relate to consciousness. And I think for a lot of people in the world, there's such a deep fear of death, and such
Yeah.
a distorted understanding in our cultures. We don't have grieving rituals. We don't have so much that is really the cause of dysfunction. Like, for example, my body breaking down was largely a result of the suppressed grief in my system.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, we would eliminate 50% of the dysfunction in the world if we actually had cultures that knew how to grieve and had a healthy relationship with death, you know, and what that actually means from a higher dimensional perspective than how our personalities perceive what it actually, what it is. And so, it's a real thing.
It for sure it is. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. From the Irish culture, we had a really intact keening ritual. That was prevalent, I think, up until maybe the late 1800s, where these women were dedicated keeners, and they would come and wail and grieve and sing and chant for the departed, and then that became outlawed almost, and it's something I'm passionate about. I would love to be involved in kind of bringing that forward.
Revival.
Yeah.
We need revival of grieving rituals on the planet.
Absolutely. Yeah, particularly now. And I think that's why I brought it up, is because I see in my own reality here in Ireland, so many young people struggling, and the older generation and all in between, because their roots have been pulled out through the uncertainty and the trauma that's just being unearthed left, right and center right now.
Yeah.
And I think that piece of like, how do we deal with what we're meeting right now with all of the collective plugs that are being pulled for people, and a lot of people cannot find inner ground in themselves, and that's something maybe you could speak to a little bit.
Well, it's when there's so much emphasis placed on the periphery, it's hard to find the center. But in the dismantling of the periphery, we're thrusted into no other choice but to try to find it. So certain souls will clamp down tighter, and their dysfunction in the way of numbing will increase until it's something else even more intense shifts them out of it. Other people are they're being thrusted inward. They're being thrusted to look at, well, essentially being, we're living on a triggered planet right now where the unresolved emotional energy is it's going to get brought up one way or another. And the moving that emotional energy is a way of beginning the healing process. So it looks, from one angle, it looks like everything's going to shit and it's all being, taken away or torn down. It's very easy to go into victimization when these things are happening, but really love is moving people forward to face what they haven't faced. It's the ego condor prophecy is not just the sharing of medicines between the North and the South. It is the higher self and the subconscious meeting at the heart, so that the higher aspects and the unseen aspects live as one being. And so for some, it's the peak experience opening, the kundalini, the awakening of the higher chakras, and the perception of, oh wow, like I'm God, or I'm part of the universe. I'm not separate. And for others, it's, oh my God, I had all this trauma I didn't know I had, or pain, or both, and so the different pathways of those that have been more in the world being thrusted into spirit, and those that are more from spirit being thrusted into the world. Yet the heart is the gateway where that bridge work wants to happen to fulfill this ascension on our planet. And so for people that are going through their early initiations now to being catalyzed, it's I remember a series of, it was like Om Namah Shivaya, right? It was like this, that was my first mantra. That was like my introduction to esoteric healing, was this working with these prayers that literally invoke the energy of change even more powerfully, which is an undeniable force of life is change, right? All these Buddhist sutras about impermanence. But for people unaware of their attachments or unaware of how they orient within life, change is kind of hard to look at. Change is a little scary. It equals death. And so there's no orientation for the initiation that's actually happening. It can just feel like life is ripping things away, and it's very easy to move into victimization because there's no actual cultural context for rites of passage. There's no cultural context, and we're not raised in a culture where you're getting those aspects of self nurtured early on. So by the time the big stuff comes, you've already got a core self online, that can meet energy and have some kind of sense of what's happening to you. There's none of that in the West. And so, yeah, there's definitely people going through it right now where they're just, they're in the big fields and they're swimming in it, and the compass is, there's no orientation. And for a lot of those people, it's just like, hey, they just need to survive the emotional experience. And some kind of great, every person has their own karma, so that how the grace enters for them is going to look different. But I think what is happening is that you start to find others. Like, oh wait, I'm not going crazy. There's a thing called the Kundalini awakening, and there's symptoms. Or oh wait, like other people are also seeing what I'm seeing, that that this thing is a total mind control manipulation program, and I used to believe it, and my whole family thinks I'm nuts, but I'm actually, there's a whole community out there, people that feel and think and see what I see, and oh, thank God, like there's entry level stuff that can stabilize pretty quickly for some people as well.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for speaking to that, Luke. And I believe, there's also a collective energy of a place, of a land space, of a country or a community that you're connected to, that can also influence all of that, right? And hence why so many of us have been traveling for many years and meeting our new communities, should I say?
Yeah.
To transition a little bit from that, I'd love to speak to that, because I know you're living on Bali, and I've never been there, but it's been calling for many years. But speaking to the land space as a teacher, the land space, the elemental consciousness, and the consciousness of the people that reside, the roots, or hold the roots of a place, how that impacts you. How that impacts you right now in Bali, really, and in general.
Yeah, as you know, as someone who is awake and aware in her knowledge of your indigenous ancestral lines and the Druid Celtic traditions and those song lines of every ancient culture that we all originally come from, those ways of relating to the natural world before there was a systemic persecution of it globally. Bali is one of the last places where that culture is intact still. And so the prayer field here is largely a big reason why I don't think the COVID situation was so strong, and why there's certain things that are the way that they are here, is because those offerings are still being made to the spirits. The reverence is still being offered to the elementals and to the gods and goddesses here of this culture. And also how that when you're in reverence, you can't be in reverence without the soul being online and the body awake, right? Then it's just you're going through the motions, but you're not actually offering the fragrance of reverence to the creation. And so you can see it embodied in the Balinese people when a woman's carrying a tray of flowers and incense, and she's putting the petal up. You feel the authentic reverence that's there. And so Balinese people are very, very happy people because they have reverence, because the soul's awake. And when we have an awake soul, there's gratitude. And when there's gratitude, there's happiness. And so for me, it when I first came here, it felt like a giant festival at Ubud. I was like, oh my God, I grew up, but a lot of my work and my life and my culture was informed by transformational festivals, which are these amazing, this guided shadow side by all means, but the beauty side of it is the creative energy and the art and being immersed and off your phone and in connection with, surrounded by like-minded souls, and you can wander to a workshop and you can see a show and music from someone you didn't know existed, and their music and touches your soul, and everyone's very open, and that openness is a break from our closed down day-to-day monotonous, and the way that space and time moves, and there's just a lot of epic connection available. It kind of felt like that in Ubud. I'm like, you got all these tons of different restaurants, and then everyone's smiling like all the time, and so it was like, wow, I'm like, this is like a perma festival. And I'm like, it's like I need to take breaks and like go inward because it's too much stimulation, just like a festival. But that's kind of how it felt. At least this section of Bali that I live is there's a very large expat community here of people, spiritual seekers from around the world that are here. This timeline being here, I've been really dedicating myself to dismantling colonization consciousness in myself and in my community, and helping any way I can to preserve Balinese culture, bring in regenerative solutions. We've, the Band-Aid is we fed over 400 families because they're so dependent on tourism that a lot of people are out of work and out of money, and therefore like down to the last bag of rice. So we've fed 400 families so far. And I'll share a story that I think is really inspiring. There's a brother on the island that's been here for 25 years who's very connected with Balinese people. And he said, what did you guys do 25 years ago before tourism? And one of the women in the village was like, well, we weaved. We were a weaving village. No one weaves anymore. He's like, well, how would that feel to maybe explore that again? And they started talking, and then one of the older ones used to do the embroidery for the royal families, and then all this buzz, and all of a sudden the whole village revitalized this 25-year art of like this prayerful weaving. And it's just like, yeah, right, chills. You just like beauty, right? And so this is these craftsmanships that are, in Guatemala and in the Amazon and the beadwork, all these things, a lot of these things have been eroded in our consumer culture. And so, I think we're partnering with the organization that's on Bali to help do that. And we want to bring that out into the world. And so there's a whole, his program's called Togetherness Program. And we have something that we're birthing here called Umasai, which is kind of like an artist collective. And we want to showcase indigenous art and help, make, it's like supporting local resilience and regional resiliency through revitalization of wisdom cultures. But that's like a small example of like a sweet story that came out of COVID times, right? Where, things aren't built to last anymore in our Western world. And these old crafts that have so much prayer and intention, there's they talk about like the beadwork in like the Huaricas in Mexico, like they're putting a prayer into every weave of the, and that's an energy that has a lot more meaning than like a Century 21, little like fake indigenous basket thing that's just, being mass produced in China or something. So I think we need stuff like that, in terms of like how the culture here can inform culture in other places. I think that I've been placed here to help stabilize certain things and connections to help, support that emerging culture on our planet, like where there's certain fundamental value systems that we participate in as a collective. Like this, like if you're going to spend money, spend it in this way instead of giving it to the big department store, you buy locally or whatever it is. And so another thing I've been doing here is I'm learning the local language. I'm taking Bahasa lessons, and so I'm not speaking the language of the oppressor. It's like just like that changes everything. Like just all these little microfibers of like how do you decolonize, because it's soft colonialism here. And I want to be in right relations. I've learned from my elders and the beautiful souls that have taken me under their wings over the years, that have recognized me as a star wisdom carrier, despite having white skin. They saw my soul, and the ancestors that work with me. I always learn from my indigenous elders that you ask permission when you go somewhere, and you make offerings, and so the colonial mindset is, what can I get? And it's like looking to get and take and have, and it's literally the opposite in the indigenous mindset. And so you see that here, you see the offering, but also the colonial mindset seeped in with the money. It's where, then it's the get and take and all that. And so I think with the way things are right now with CVID and the Rona, or whatever, we have little nicknames for it. After the great pause. After the great pause, we have an opportunity to rethink our systems, because it illuminated all the distortions of that core of separation from nature and each other and the village. So what I'm really about, Mara, is reviving the village, the global village culture, like reviving village culture on the planet. And the Balinese, they've been had it figured out. They've been doing it. They live in villages. They self-govern. They're in the philosophy of Trihita Karana, which is right relationship with spirit, the land, and each other. Like that's their core philosophy. And it's not being as practiced fully with the tourism, but with the pause, there's an opportunity to potentially build deeper relations between the expat and Balinese people, because there's a lot of people that come here from Australia and from the West that are not, they come very entitled, and they come very in that deep colonialization mindset. And so I want to do everything I can in my power to be in right relationship with this land, which is volcanic, and so it brings your stuff up. It's deep, just like Hawaii.
Oh yeah.
Deep roots, deep medicine will bring your stuff up. These are very sacred portals of healing. And where I live, Ubud means medicine in Balinese. It's the center of the island. Right. And it's a huge vortex here. Like you can feel it. It gets intense sometimes. It's like Sedona has got all those vortexes.
Yeah.
Like, literally, some days you're like, what is going on? So
it's not easy to live in an active area like that. You have to be very diligent about your own self-care and mastery practices, right?
There's no shortage of self-care in Bali. Absolutely. Yeah. People from the outside looking in, they're just like, oh, privilege and all these things. And yes, absolutely privilege. But how do we use that privilege? Focus on healing, focus on doing the really deep work that other people aren't willing to feel or do. And it does ripple out to the whole creation. So, I've lived in these volcanic places or paradise places, but it hasn't been fun or easy. It hasn't been all rainbows and hummingbirds and cacao ceremonies and ecstatic dance. It's like there's deep work happening in these places. If you're of a certain vibration and you're committed to growth and healing, it actually amplifies it. And so there's no avoiding yourself when you cross a certain threshold on this path. There's no going back to sleep. There's no, I'll just hang out in yoga land and avoid my process. It's like life is going to bring it. Yep. And so I feel, for a long time now, very surrendered to where I've been placed on the world and how I'm guided there. And, very often, with a lot of resistance to my personality. Like, I don't want to freaking go there. Are you kidding me? I got to go there. Oh, fine. All right. Go in there, and you get there, and then you find out why you're there. And crossing a bunch of souls over and grieving and, whatever's going on.
Welcome to my world. I know.
Yep. I was actually joking with Cece about this, like waking up in the middle of the night and just like, can you cross me over, please? Like, all
right. Yeah. It is. And I think from like you spoke to, from outside looking in, there's always a perceptual awareness, or there can be, from people who maybe are not in that place or just at a different place in their own lives, that it is all easy and breezy and, how can that person do that? But it's actually a huge sacrifice that you make to live a life in service. Like you give all of yourself over.
There's no, this is the thing, the people that are self-identified in a Newtonian scientific paradigm of matter without spirit don't understand spirit. They don't understand the quantum multidimensional fabric of creation. And so they're judging everything through their mental body and through personality. And so it's only going through one filter, often influenced by their wounds. And so, when you look into these situations where there's a lot happening, and a lot of spiritual people are being asked to step into more, like I said, more connection through things like Black Lives Matter and what's going on our planet. We're being asked to come into connection with each other and like look at the unresolved trauma and where we live in a colonized world and where there's this disparity in doing that work and not just hanging out and bypassing or like, if I just heal myself, it'll all magic work out. it's a yes and it's both. And those that have been deeply committed, those of us that have privilege have used all of our privilege to invest in making the world a better place, in give, like literally, like you said, sacrificing everything that we have in order to become a tool of the divine, and that can sound egoic from certain perspectives, but it's, when that becomes a lived experience, there's a threshold crossed in the journey where it's no longer a matter of what you want. It's no longer like it's let thine will be done. There's no, like, the personality cannot steer the ship. The ego can't. Like, you are ripped from things. You are dragged by your soul, kicking and screaming, into initiations that the average person would avoid at all costs. And it's not fun, and it's not glamorous, and there isn't a fucking cookie or like a stamp of validation that you get at the end of the day from that stuff. That's between you and creator, and that's between you and your dharma. And some people might see it, and some feel it and recognize it and appreciate it, and a lot of people will project all their stuff all over it, and make assumptions and have stories about it, and that's okay.
Oh, yes, breathing that one. Yeah. Yeah, and that's that is where I think being your own advocate, being your own deep friend, your own anam cara, as they say in Ireland, being that soul friend to yourself, and deeply holding yourself in that space, no matter what the outside world projects upon you as real or as who they think you are, right? How important that is along the path, because that deepens your connection with spirit, right? It deepens your path of service, whatever that looks like, or your path of living this life in a real way. Yeah. So yeah, I feel that. Are you experiencing, well, this is something I'm experiencing and have been experiencing with people I've been dialoguing with. Obviously, in our current time, there's so much flying around. There's so many rabbit holes we can go down. There's so many different perceived realities and different things that are taking place, and trying to find your balance within all of that, and neutrality, right? Like, what's my truth within all of these other realities? I am hearing a lot that there is like tracking of individuals, and that, real truth is being like squashed by other agendas and things like that. Are you experiencing that in your community? Like, people who are rising up are being tracked or like targeted?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of fuckery going on.
Yeah.
To hold the awareness of the agendas without going into fear is very tricky. It's challenging. Let's not say tricky. It's because those darker timelines are seductive, and in their seduction, there's a way to hook into the unresolved victimization that lives in us. We don't have any choice but to purge every layer and level of victimization from our nervous systems, reclaim every aspect of our soul's power from every timeline that we've ever existed in. That is the only thing that will secure the golden age that we know is possible, is to do the work and hold with pristine awareness the possibilities of the world that we know is possible, to really live into that from every cell of our being. It is nothing less than becoming fully awakened souls on this planet. And it's not everyone needs to do that. There are a contingency of us here doing that. And for some of the collective, it is setting boundaries. It is being on the front lines and saying no to oppression. And each soul is in their journey. Some are going to check out of body and work from the other side, or go and learn off planet. Some are going to go and opt in for the microchip and go full merging with technology and think singularity is a good path for them. And then, a portion of the planet's going to, set the boundaries and be frontline level people. And then there's going to be a portion of the planet that's going to literally alchemize every epigenetic signature wound inside them to awaken the dormant DNA and fully activate their light body and live in the awareness of their multidimensional mastery as a divine being on earth, and full awareness of who they are. beyond the personality, beyond the mind, beyond a fraction of doubt. And so when you say neutrality, how to hold the neutrality allows for the emotional experience that's happening. If the fear comes, meet it, track it. Where is it? What is it taking you? World War II, Nazi Germany. Okay, let's purge that from the ancestors. Trail of Tears, the transatlantic genocide, whatever it's bringing up in the collective and yourself, it's the self-responsibility of working with the emotional energy to free yourself, because it's everything that all these agendas that are on the planet have systematically been put in place to dupe us out of the awareness of who we are as divine beings because of our co-creative power. When we are anchored in the truth of our sovereignty, the world self-organizes around that orientation. It literally matter forms around the quantum field, not the other way around. And so everyone's trying to scramble in the densest level, and then they're forgetting to go to the quantum first.
Right.
And this is, Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this. There's plenty of integrated, grounded people that can give these analogies without it being woo-woo. I'm sharing a lot more woo stuff than I normally do in podcasts because of knowing who you are and guessing who your audience is. I can talk about this stuff like this, but I don't always talk like this on a lot of these podcasts. But it feels like I'm just trusting what's alive here for this crew. And so there's I think it's a balance, depending on who we are, of setting boundaries, claiming sovereignty, clearing, understanding that we are in a multidimensional war right now, but it's not won through force. It's not, this is like everything that Star Wars has taught us, and the Matrix and all of these things. And there is a real systematic agenda happening, but all these agendas actually accelerate our ascension when we alchemize what they trigger in us and what they bring up. It speeds up our embodiment. And so as we embody, our field can influence this quantum reality. When I say our field can influence reality, what I mean, for example, you take someone who's very in their joy and their love, and you put them on a train in Manhattan, and they look around and they start laughing. And they start to laugh, and the first person looks over and they're like, what? And they just catch the bug, and then they start to laugh. And then the person next to them is like, gets off their phone, and they're like, and then all of a sudden the whole train is laughing. They go from a shutdown in their own world to a train of people in connection laughing, right? And so when I say we can influence the quantum field, we can influence the quantum field. So enough of us are online, and we're in an awareness of shared reality, and we're in the clarity of our boundaries, we're in the clarity of the world that we know is possible and that we prefer, and that our souls is unwilling to accept anything other than that. Enough of us tip the scales that life is sort of self-organizing around that, and all these agendas require force and control, which is the reversal of fate. It's trying to go against the fate of nature. It's trying to shape a timeline that we opt into. If we give too much of our attention, intention, and awareness to, it siphons those powerful light workers' consciousness to actually bring it about. And this is where a lot of light workers get lost and confused, because they see the truth of that possibility, because they can perceive multiple timelines. They don't have words for it. They like feel the truth of that agenda in their body. And then they start to get siphoned into fear. So when you bring a light worker into fear and they move into victimization, their consciousness becomes a powerful amplifier to bring that into reality. And so we have to take self-responsibility. We have to unplug. We have to do whatever we can to expand our field and begin to return to who we are, and clear out the imprints and the deepest of false beliefs that the dark is more powerful than the light. If there's any smidgen of that distortion, then they can hook in. You have to know beyond a fraction of doubt in your cellular being that the light wins. The light was always stronger than the dark, and that it may not be easy. This is indeed much more challenging than many of us have expected. This is what we signed up for. This is why we came. And so you have to find whatever you can to renew faith, move the energy, grieve, dance, do the practices, work with the tools, get support, be in connection, build coherence with the people in your grid that are most immediately in connection with you, get vulnerable, go beyond your conception of reality and hold it a little more looser, because we have to come back to trusting life, that that there is a divine plan, and that these beings that are trying to enslave humanity's consciousness into a construct and literally terraform our planet, they're going against the laws of creation in a free will zone. And so they're the only way that we win is if we unify at a very high level. And so we have to dismantle the distortions of separation that are very ancient. This is a long play that they've been at. This is thousands of years in the making. It's not in the last 10 years, not since 9/11. It's much more ancient than that. And so, yeah.
Letting that ripple out. There's a huge amount of gifts within that. Thank you.
So there's a visualization that I was given by the guides during this time of, you know how like the moon phases, that art piece where like it's the phases of the moon?
Yes, I've seen it.
So what you imagine is multiple Earths, and each Earth is a parallel timeline. And we're at this crossroads, and in this direction, we're going into the dark. There's a dark timeline. There's the fully terraformed, smart city, biochip, the worst of the worst. And then over here, you got the golden age. You got the eco villages. You got the ascended civilization. You got the ET interfacing at the high, like full, highest timelines. And the idea is to keep bringing your energy in that direction. Actually visualize that. And if you see any little hooks or weird shit coming from that other darker timeline, you set a boundary with it. And you keep imagining your energy going into that golden age timeline of that Earth, that parallel Earth that your soul is saying, that's what I came here to experience. That's what I came here to create. That's the timeline I'm choosing for myself and humanity. And you focus your energy on that. Just to orient how you feel. Because the way that you feel in your body, this is micro, in a reality of infinite timelines, moment to moment to moment to moment to moment to moment to moment, where we are, right? And so this is just a way to get into alignment, and then we can make informed choices. It's not a way to magically wipe away certain things that are in our realities, but it's certainly a way to move the energy. So.
That's so beautiful and powerful. I can feel that, and that just having that orientation point and weaving it in, like in the day to day, in the country, in the community, in the space that you live, like it's so powerful. And it really doesn't. It opens the space, even if you're living in a dense environment, an urban environment. It opens the space for other people and that whole reality to shift around you if you're able to hold that frequency. Or hold that prayer, even if that's all if you can just hold the prayer or say a prayer that aligns with that energy. That is powerful. Thank you. I think we're getting near to I think that's the message really for today. That's beautiful, Luke. Because I was going to ask your opinion on how you see what was seeded in like 2012 and the vision of new earths that was being, cooked in the cauldron in those days, and that we thought we were moving into through the end of the Mayan cycle then. How do you think it's shifted in this current time? Like, are things still the same? Are you still perceiving similar, the eco villages in the same way, or what is
they're happening? We're being, it's like, let's go, it's time. Like there's a quickening, there's a oh shit, it's real. Like we can't, like not another year of touring, ground down, homestead, plant the garden, fucking now. And more people getting the download and the blueprint. I got the download for an eco village in 2008. I saw it in Costa Rica. I was like, this is part of my life purpose. And now I like meet people. I just woke up. They're like, I'm putting $1 million towards getting some land. We're gonna live together. Like just like fresh out the gate. It's like, whoa, cool, all right. And so it's happening. And what it's important to understand in these indigenous prophecies of the shifting of the yugas and the Mayan and the Hopi prophecies,
Mm-hmm.
is that Vesica, like the three worlds are kind of differentiating right now. And so we're at that point right now where the Vesica Pisces is like, there's the world of the Trump and the freaking microchips, and there's the golden age timeline, and there's everything in between right now. So the full, it's like we're at this multidimensional gateway, the train station. It's like choose your own adventure, choose wisely, because it's gonna stabilize in 2023. So the dark is it's the darkest moment right now. For the next 2 years, it's gonna be, they're just getting started. It's gonna be gnarly. It's gonna get gnarly, but then it's gonna shift back to the light in around 2023. And so we just gotta survive the storm. We just gotta ride it out. Feel the big feels, keep using the tools, stay together, stay in connection, do the work, and the light returns in 2023. So yeah.
I love that. I think that's the closing statement there. Is there anything else that you feel you'd like to speak to before we? Because I think there's so much in there that is just, that's the download.
There's definitely some codes that we shared to feel into and live into. Because I imagine a lot of people listening to this are also extremely sensitive, and like I said, it's not. You said something about neutrality. Neutrality actually allows for the emotional experience to come up. So if we're judging when we're triggered, we're going to be in trouble. And it's really learning to ride the razor's edge of, okay, this thing that's happening, like the vaccines or whatever. It's bringing up some big unsafety, big fear. But then going in and taking self-responsibility for those feelings and doing the work to get support around that, and moving the emotional energy consciously, it shifts. I came up with a meme this morning in the shower of, the world changes when you change.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we all just keep doing our work, we're gonna get through it. We're gonna ride the storm. It's like hunker down. It's like when a hurricane's coming, what do? You stock up on food, you bolster down.
Yep.
The storm's gonna pass. Some people are gonna get swept away. Some people are gonna lose their shit. Some people are gonna transition. It's gonna happen. I'm not saying it's gonna be easy or it's all love and light. It's not. It's gonna be gnarly, but get ready to hunker down, and it's going to be okay. And when you hunker down, simplify, candlelight, sacred fire, journaling, music, whatever it is. Like, we got to learn to live a simpler now.
Yeah.
And then, when the purification stage is over and we move into the renewal stage, it's going to be a different story. It's going to be like, the sun comes out after the hurricane. It's like, there's a beautiful stillness, and you rebuild the village. That's what it's going to be like, I think. That's my perspective.
Beautiful. Yeah, I feel it. I feel it. And it's so true. I feel like that call to simplifying and getting really practical with what you can do from where you are right now, in terms of learning how to grow something to sustain yourself, learning how to grow some plants, learning how to, tend to your physical environment in a simplified way, and just getting rid of all of the clutter and all of the things that block all of that. I'm praying into that vision for the village. That's part of my soul, is really like that's where I'm focused.
It's the new earth. That's the divine plan. That's what we want.
For sure. And just feeling that land, like I definitely feel called to steward a land space as well, for leaving a legacy behind on that level, and feeling those timelines really expedited, like you spoke to. It is, there's no gap anymore. It is like, you have to cut all the crap out, and you have to just meet yourself, show up, tend to yourself with loving care, but also practically apply yourself to life in the way that you can in that moment, and just keep taking each step, right? Yeah, such a time. And I just, it gives me so much hope and you know, is that seed that needs more ignition here in Ireland, around what's happening over there, and just hearing the cultures, you know, being supported, and the indigenous of those lands, you know, being reignited into what they, you know, their sacred gifts and their weaving and the storytelling, all of these things coming alive again is just so magical. You know, and it's happening in Ireland as well. There's, you know, a great resurgence with the younger generation, and even those Irish Americans living in this, you know, living in the States, who nearly know more Irish than I do myself. It's actually embarrassing, you know. There's, it's the way. Well, I am just so grateful for you sharing all that's come through, and I know that there is infinitely more pathways that we could explore here today, but I really feel like that's a beautiful chunk to assist those who are listening, or just to open some gates for people today.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Mara. It's been a pleasure, and
thank you.
Much love to everyone out there. You know, we're all walking each other home. You know, we're not meant to do it alone, and that's the beauty of being here, is being part of a community of souls that all agreed to this.
Right. I know. Even at times when you think, why did I agree to any of this? Get me out of here. Yeah. We're here. Yeah. Thank you. And is there actually, before we leave, is there anything you'd like to share that you're currently offering in the world?
We have an 8-week men's course right now with myself, Kevin Orris, and Dan Regan. Dan Regan's one of the top Gene Keys facilitators on the planet, amazing empowerment coach, shadow worker out of Australia. And then Kevin Orris is one of my dearest brothers, who's flow state mastery and entrepreneur and sacred sexuality, men's work. And so we have a men's course we're doing. And then, I have ongoing offerings and inspiration on my Instagram. And I do one-off healing work with people as well to quantum healing, to really get to the core origin of anything that's not serving someone's highest timeline. Any major issue that's unresolved, we can get to the core source of it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I highly recommend your Instagram and all that you're putting out there. And I'm currently listening to your album, which I bought a while ago, which has some amazing codes in there as well. So I'll share all of that, obviously, with this when it goes out.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.